Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. We'll be getting a major update from Michael Connelly from the U.S. Justice Foundation. And we have a few minor technical problems trying to connect, but we will connect. And he is available. He's not over in Austria. He's here in America, but minor issues there. The whole issue of what's going on with our politics. Michael, of course, is one of the senior attorneys with the U.S. Justice Foundation to put together the articles of impeachment which Congress has put forward. It's his opinion, as we talked about a month ago, that the impeachment probably won't go forward in the Republican Party until after the elections, although a number of new impeachable events are occurring as Obama is starting overflights over Syria, putting more troops on the ground to protect, the quote, U.S. Embassy in the Green Zone in Iraq. And moving up toward, he's being resistive, though, believe it or not, at least feigning resistance to the idea of a Gulf War III war where we have major troop deployments against, quote, ISIS, which we created 2 years ago, trained in Jordan with British Special Forces, American Special Forces, and Academy, which is the latest name for Blackwater Security, which is a good name for it, Blackwater. It's not good water, it's Blackwater. And it's pretty bizarre from what I can see what's happening to, the whole issue of what's happening to our situation in America. We are led by fools. The agenda set by banks. Even the parties that should be doing things like the Republican Party are not. And I find it very bizarre indeed that we continue to pretend that things are okay when they're not really okay at all. We have a situation where Obama continues to say one statement and do the exact opposite. You can't believe what he's saying. You have to believe what he's going to do. And, of course, Michael is going to give us the latest update on what's happening there, and also with our veterans, where veterans are continually being harassed and disarmed. They're actually being told that they, quote, if they're not managing their budget, they're incompetent, therefore they can't handle a gun, even after they've been deployed multiple terms, or if they come back with some minor post-traumatic stress or depression, trying to readjust to society. They're told they're no longer competent to carry a weapon in America. It's ridiculous. And, of course, we have 26 million veterans in America. That's a lot of people potentially armed against a government that's completely militarizing the police. It's obvious, no matter what side you are on the issue in Ferguson, Illinois, the fact is that the police are trigger-happy. And, yes, this young man was probably more aggressive than he should have been, especially against the police that are armed and are being militarized. But we have a situation that is not good. And, when Bearcats are being sold from the military to our police, and we see the police look more and more like an occupying army, we don't have a good situation here. And, of course, the policemen always have to have some degree of respect from the public to be able to police them and to protect the public. They have to have a collaboration. And when the public always perceives the police as being possible combatants in a civil insurrection, if things break down due to an EMP or financial meltdown, the police are in grave danger themselves. They're certainly not going to be free of being targeted by civilian militia if they start to do things that are unethical, unreasonable, and un-American. And the same goes in other countries. You can't have police act like thugs, or you're going to have a problem. So we want to demilitarize the police. We want them to get respect back. We want them to be collaborating with civilian militia and firefighters and so on, and integrating with the ability to handle natural disasters, fires, power blackouts, even the potential for EMPs if we have terrorism from various foreign nations. If we do get involved with stupid wars overseas, don't expect it to not trickle back here and have effects on us. So what I see happening is not good, and I see America as really not getting with the program in terms of what's happening to the United States. Looking at some of the latest news here, too, before we get Michael Connelly on the next segment. U.S. is not intimidated by beheadings, Obama says. I'm thinking, we are not intimidated? What he's saying is we're not going to deploy troops because we see beheadings. Well, the fact is these have all the markings, these beheadings, of being staged. Obama says Ukraine is a moment of testing. No, it's not a moment of testing of America and the West. Obama's being a fool here. Putin simply asking for negotiations with Kiev and Poroshenko to bring a proper reform so that the independent states will not be bombed and shelled and kill civilians, which they've killed thousands of, and to restrain them with a situation where they won't join NATO and cause a danger zone on their border with Russia. That's pretty straightforward. I think NATO has already lost. They certainly are going to lose big time if they could start expanding their expansion of sanctions against Russia under the circumstances. Russia is certainly going to survive better. It'll actually force Russia and the BRICS nations to do more that'll damage the U.S. dollar and the European central bank system. And the Bank of International Settlement statements made by Harley Schlanger in the first segment made that pretty plain. We have the UN Security Council demanding release of detained peacekeepers. I mean, this goes on, and all the dead journalists. And then we have NATO leaders warning to Putin. Come on. Mr. Cameron, you're out of your mind. You're a loudmouth idiot, and you really don't know what you're talking about. And the idea that you're going to kick butt to Russia doesn't want to kick butt. They want to make a deal. Mr. Vladimir Putin is negotiating with all the cards close to his chest. He has all the gas and oil that supplies Europe with power. He certainly could, as he said, if he wanted to move into Kiev, he would have been in there in 2 weeks, and they tried to twist his words and say he's planning on entering it. He wants them to enter into what's called statehood talks. Vladimir Putin, he's a master at doing these things, and loud, boisterous talk from Cameron and Obama making statements for the media, not for reality, isn't going to help things at all. It's just, I think, pretty ridiculous. So that's what I see happening there. In terms of where things are going, and a couple of other announcements, I want to tell you that my first book on functional medicine will be coming out in the next few weeks. It's going to be titled Dr. You, How to Understand Your Body, the Operator's Manual. It'll talk about everything from, I call simple analysis of how the body works in terms of cellular physiology, to some issues that can get pretty scientific, like plasma physics of cellular interactions and DNA epigenetics, and how nutraceuticals combine with energetic technologies, hyperbaric oxygen, specific scalar energies, and the newer technologies for reversing aging, and a possible what I call imagineering as to what's coming in the future that's going to basically bring us to zero senescence, where aging doesn't need to occur at all, except for stupid accidents and wars. There's no need to die. Dying will be a product of war and stupidity and starvation and pandemics, which, of course, the globalists are creating to get more power and control. And, of course, they're terrified of the population now being able to get access to not only limitless knowledge through the Internet, but limitless energy from tokamak fusion and energy reactors and energy from the vacuum, which Professor McKinney's talked about. But they're also concerned about people being able to access life extension technology, so they won't rely on government-sponsored programmed aging as part of the economic system of devastation and taking away the accumulative assets of people. So that's where I see things going. We also have some new information in terms of what's happening in healthcare. The American Ebola patient speaks out as another is identified, Dr. Rick Sacra, latest American to become infected with Ebola virus while working in West Africa for the aid agency serving in mission. So we're seeing more and more evidence of airborne spread. British Ebola patient who got ZMapp drug is released from hospital, so it proves ZMapp works, which is monoclonal antibody, as I mentioned before. Monoclonal antibodies are one of the avenues where real vaccines could be made, but they're not being made. And they could actually be set up so the monoclonal antibody production could be programmed into your body in some way so that you protect you against a pathogen, so you have an immune memory against a pathogen you've never been exposed to. This is higher technology than the current vaccines, and they're not doing it. They're exploring technologies which can screw up your genetics, give you toxic heavy metals and adjuvants and other things. So ZMAP's good, but it's not going to be good for enough people quick enough. And, of course, if the virus changes its genetics, it's going to be devastating. Hello, Michael, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
So much space.
USJF.net. USJF, tell us the latest agenda. What's happening, Michael, before the election, and what's going on in foreign policy, or lack of it, policy, and what's going on with the veterans?
I sat there watching Fox News today and listening to the President of the United States basically say that we're going to degrade and destroy ISIS, the terrorist organization. But again, it's all verbiage. He doesn't say how we're going to do it. I don't know how he thinks we're going to fight. He won't call this a war. I mean, they're beheading American citizens. They're killing people all over the world, or all over the Middle East, I should say, and want to kill people all over the world. I'm fearing an imminent terrorist attack on our own soil.
Which they'll, of course, either ignore even if they have the findings. Like we know that the Saudi Arabians and the Israeli Mossad were involved in 9/11, which is coming up the 13th anniversary. And you know if something major happens, like ISIS actually has already threatened to do a major bombing or attack on Chicago. I mean, they've publicly stated this, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. And, they're going to try to carry it out. And it may not be on 9/11, but it's going to happen.
Right.
Eventually they're going to make an effort. And, our military is being cut by this president to the point where we are about weaker than we were at the beginning of World War II.
Right.
I mean, our ships are being dry docked, our airplanes are being grounded, our troop strength is being cut in half. You've got a couple of thousand captains and majors who received pink slips in the Army telling them that they're going to be thrown out even after all of their good service to their country, and they're going to be put in the job market where there are no jobs available for them, basically. So we're cutting our military, and interestingly enough, the Pentagon has been bragging about the fact that they think they killed a terrorist in Somalia just a couple of days ago with Hellfire missile strikes. Well, pretty soon we'll have no Hellfire missiles because Obama has ordered the production of those missiles, which is our best missile in our arsenal, that the production of those missiles be stopped. So how are we supposedly going to subdue ISIS if we don't have the military capability to do it?
Well, we created them in the first place, and then when they get out of control. I want to give an example of our policy. Obama is a Muslim apologist, and he apologizes for Islam, or basically doesn't deal with them straightforwardly, because they're dangerous, okay, wherever they are. Even if you think you have control of them through your special forces and CIA. And this is Rick Matthews' comment about who's an infidel, and he's a well-known Christian leader in prison ministry. And I want to cut short the question he asked. He was participating in a talk where they had an Islamic leader, a Christian leader, and a Jewish leader, etc. And they asked the Muslim cleric exactly what their faith was, and of course it was to have holy jihad and to kill infidels. He said, "What's the definition of an infidel?" He said, "Anybody who doesn't believe in what we believe." He said, "By that definition, does that include me?" And he had to reply sheepishly, "Yes." So basically, from that point onward, the so-called meeting was trying to bring all these religions together. I personally don't think anybody that's Muslim should be allowed in the country, and we should be monitoring the ones that are in the country. I think we should disconnect our CIA and other special training and contribution to even Israeli Mossad training these Muslims through ISIS, which we now know one of the senior leaders of Shin Bet and Mossad is directly involved with ISIS. ISIS is a counterpoint to try to drag us into another greater Israel war, which Israel, by the way, will not be able to tolerate, because hundreds of thousands of missiles from Muslim countries coming in on Israel will destroy it, and they'll counter with nuclear missiles, which will drag us into a nuclear war with Russia, which Russia doesn't want. Russia wants to move from a single economy to a market economy where they have more than one industry of energy. And China is teetering on disaster. For every job they create, they have 9 people trained to do those jobs. So China, although they try to pretend it's so wonderful, I had talked to Ron Klatz, one of my friends who's the president of the A4M, largest academy of anti-aging medicine in the world, the founder, and he said China's a joke. It's three streets wide. Everything else is back centuries ago, and the place basically is so polluted it's insane. Again, Obama's policies, foreign policies, are absent. His policy of dealing with Russia is not one of collaboration to get rid of the drug war. He doesn't treat the veterans properly because he's afraid of them, because he knows if he does things that are really wrong, and he tries to declare martial law, the veterans will train other young people, and there'll be a completely civilian militia-controlled country. It won't be controlled by the U.S. government anymore. It will be basically fiefdoms of local militia that will control this country, not Obama and not the military. And they're freaked out by that because the bankers want to do their little game and they're not going to get away with it. That's why they're so desperate to destroy the dignity of veterans. That's why they want to make sure that they have foreign policy that says one thing and does another. They can't take on Russia, and Russia doesn't want to take on us. They can't take on ISIS because they created them. They want them there so they have a good reason to stay in the whole area and continue to suck the oil out of Iraq and continue balkanizing the whole region. And All of our policies are stupid. They are wasteful of money we can't afford, and they waste blood and tissue and lives of our young men and women that die in these stupid wars. I just think it's disgusting, and I'm so angry with Boehner, who should be fired first, and then we should impeach Obama. But I'd like to see the Republicans get their act together, and the Democrats that want to be real blue dog Democrats get their act together and withdraw from this maniac, who's a sock puppet for the Queen of England, George Soros, and Satan. That's what he is. And these people are going to drag us into economic devastation, warfare with countries we should have no business fighting, and playing footsie with Islam, which is dangerous as hell.
Well, we are doing this politically correct nonsense. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, any Muslim feelings. And we don't want to hurt them.
We want to embarrass them into not existing anymore. We want moderate Muslims to say, we'll have nothing to do with you extreme maniacs. That's what they did in Egypt. The Egyptian moderate Muslims collaborated with Christian Maimonites, Jews, and others that are just secular agnostics, and basically said, we want to have an Egypt that actually has a market economy and can feed ourselves. We don't want to have Muslim Brotherhood anymore, even if they're sponsored by Saudi Arabia, which eventually withdrew their support because they started doing terrorism inside Saudi Arabia. And we don't want to have Muslim Brotherhood, destroying our country. So they had two clues. The Egyptians actually had more clues than the Saudis or the Americans to continue stupid foreign policies.
Well, you're correct. And, the foreign policy, well, we don't have a foreign policy. I mean, our foreign policy is the same foreign policy that Great Britain adopted prior to World War II. And that was apology and appease. That didn't work with Adolf Hitler. It's not going to work with ISIS. But in the meantime, our military is being cut. Obama hates the military. He hates veterans. I just received a report yesterday that suicides among older veterans, particularly my era, the Vietnam War, suicides are at an all-time high among veterans because they can't get treated by the VA. They can't get their benefits. We have 25% of our active duty military personnel whose families are having to go to food banks so they can put enough food on the table for their family. Now, that's ridiculous. But at the same time, we've got homeless veterans all over the country, and a bunch of them in San Antonio, Texas. And what's going on in San Antonio? You got 2,000 illegal immigrants that are housed at Lackland Air Force Base at the cost of $250 per person per day. We're talking about almost $500,000 being spent on these illegals. So you got 2,000 of them housed at Lackland. You've got ICE converting one of their facilities to luxury suites to house 352 more illegals, and they'll be having flat screen TV.
And we're back with Michael Connelly. Michael, let's go over the things you mentioned just on the break. Obama shut down the immigration system. I'm an American. My mother was American. I was born in Detroit at Providence Hospital, 1952, February 15, midnight, Valentine's Day. And my mom in Fargo, North Dakota. And I'm going to tell you, I'm totally disgusted. My son just got his citizenship after being born in Canada, being in America basically most of his life. He's 23. And we went through great time and expense to go through the proper process to make sure we passed all the tests. And then these idiot politicians like Obama basically, instead of deporting people that shouldn't be here, and basically all they'd have to do, and they did it in other countries, all they declare is basically say, if you're here illegally and you don't get out, you don't ever get a chance to apply to be a citizen. That would put a stop to it right away. They just leave. And what happens is a lot of these people that are here, we already have proof from their own home country and their consular offices. These are felons. Obama released 68,000 proven felons with Eric Holder back onto the streets of America. I'm thinking, what a nut. This is trying to destroy not only America, but the immigration system. I think it needs to be streamlined. I think it needs a better system so the people coming from other countries, whether they're high-tech engineers from China or France, wants to come here and they go through the proper vetting process and learn about America and want to become Americans and learn to become valuers of the U.S. Constitution, and learn to speak English so that they can actually communicate rather than having an enclave of their culture. And it's fine to have multiculturalism like Europe, but the thing is, we don't want a fractured country with a bunch of felons here or people come constant, I call the gruel class, where they're basically starving and waiting for Obama and the Democrats to give them more gruel. What we want is independent builders of a new America. And I don't care where they come from. I want a rapid immigration system that works, not one that allows criminals in here, including even people that serve 1 or 2 terms in the military, but have a background that's very dark from Guatemala or Nicaragua or somewhere else. I think it's very stupid to bring in illegals that are criminals and have MS-13 tattoos on them and then think it's okay to build an America based on that. That's not smart, is it?
Well, it's not only not smart, but it's a violation of the Constitution. Because the fact of the matter is that the Constitution of the United States is very specific that the control of immigration into this country is in the hands of Congress, not the President of the United States. Now, Congress has passed laws on immigration, not allowing illegals to come in here, forcing people to go through the proper channels, but the illegals are coming in. They have been streaming in. This has been going on for years, unfortunately, but under Obama, the floodgates have opened. And, they want all these people to come in so they can register them to vote, whether they're citizens or not. They're going to register them to vote, and they're going to vote Democratic. They want to turn red states like Texas and Arizona into blue states with a flood of illegal immigrants. But the fact of the matter is Obama is violating his oath of office, which was the same oath that I took as a member of the military, to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. He's violating that oath because under Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution, the President is told he has to enforce the laws passed by Congress. It doesn't say he can make those new laws. It doesn't say he can decide which ones to enforce and which not to. It doesn't say he can amend the laws. Obama does all of those. And when it comes to immigration, he's just decided to shut down the whole system. The immigration courts have been shut down for all intents and purposes. The judges are screaming bloody murder. They got 357,000 cases backlogged. They don't have the money to pay their staffs. They're told they cannot try any of these cases, these deportation cases, unless the defendants, the illegals, are represented by an attorney paid for by the U.S. taxpayers. And so Obama appropriates the money to pay these attorneys, but these attorneys never show up in court. They don't show up. They just collect their paychecks and they sit back and do nothing. So the court system can't even have a hearing because their attorneys are not present.
How come the Bar Association can't enforce that?
These people.
Wow. How come the Bar Association is allowing this for these attorneys to just collect their pay from the federal government and not even show up in court and kind of clear these cases and get them out of here? To me, it's 3 compartments. Firstly, outright people that are criminals, they're felons, need to get out. Number 2, the gray zone areas where you have people who are trying to come across there that you investigate and then you find out they have a felony back in their home country. And then the people who have come here and just thought that they were marketed because that there were commercials showing up in Nicaragua and these other countries. Those people need to just be told, if you don't leave, you're not going to ever be able to apply for citizenship. And then they immediately be deported. Then we have the humanitarian situation, which we created, and I've got some pretty good evidence that in Guatemala there were actually CIA-affiliated teams that were actually killing Guatemalan native males so that they could actually in a sense, force women to bring their children up to the border. And, of course, we know Carlos Slim was the richest man in Mexico. Two congressmen own, along with a third person, own the railway that actually brings these people up the train of death, they call it. All you have to do is make a call to Mr. Carlos Slim or these congressmen and say, hey, stop doing this. And it wouldn't happen. But why are they doing it? Why is the Mexican government giving 72 hours for people to cross the Mexican border from Guatemala right through to the United States? It's because they're compliant with what Obama's doing. It's a scheme. It requires multiple parties. This isn't just happening. It didn't happen during George Bush or Bill Clinton or anybody else. It's happening during Obama because they've schemed this together, didn't they?
Yes, they did. And it gets even worse because now we have proof that there are billboards in Spanish being put up in Mexico along the border, and there are radio ads being run in Mexico by the Obama administration telling people that if they have ever been deported, they can now come back and won't be deported again.
Right.
Actually
to me, that should be impeachable by itself.
Millions of people over the years, and now these millions are also being invited from Mexico to come back in. So, and by the way, the health care figures, the number of people signed up for Obamacare, a lot of those are illegals. because Obama had meetings going on. This happened right here in South Texas, down around Brownsville. They had a Mexican consulate down there, and the federal government hosted a meeting in the Mexican consulate for a bunch of people who live across the border in Mexico, but come across the border to work sometimes, and they come across legally. Right. But they're not U.S. citizens, so they're not entitled to be on to government subsidies for health care. But they were told at these meetings that if they signed up for Obamacare, they could cross the border anytime they wanted, and they could get free health care, that they would be subsidized. Most Americans on the system are not being subsidized to that point where it's completely free. But in order to pad the numbers of people signing up for Obamacare, they were actually advertising for people to come into this country illegally.
Wow. I mean, these things are so outrageous, so obscene, so over the top. It's like, doesn't Obama ever think he could end up in prison over this? Doesn't he realize that he's president today, but he may not be tomorrow? And if he ever assumes that he's going to become dictator for life, he's delusional. He's not Nero. This is America. It's not going to succumb to this foolishness. It's not going to happen. And there's enough good people, including enraged judges that are trying to try these cases, enraged citizens, congressmen, both, by the way, it includes Democrats who are pretty ticked off, and a lot of people who know that he's already deep sixed the Democratic chances of keeping the whole control of the Senate. They know they're going to lose at this election. They know they're going to lose it. And then we've got this fool Hillary Clinton who just cackles like a witch of the West, thinks she's going to be elected as the next president. The Democrats are done. And the problem I see is that the Republicans haven't done their job either, so I don't want them to bring us down a different trail that's bad, because it's like a beast walking across the ground. Liberal leg, Republican conservative leg, back and forth, as they move us toward an endpoint that's not good. Because the Republicans, if they were doing their job a year ago, Boehner would have impeached Obama, and they would have at least started the process, even though they don't have Senate votes. And I think even your documents sitting there in the Senate committees, in the committees in Congress, probably are already, how can I say, it's like Damocles' sword hanging over Obama's head. He knows that the day of reckoning is coming. Probably right after these elections, is what I guess.
Yeah, I think that's when it happens.
Welcome back, and the web links, if you want to get more information from Michael Connelly. Michael Connelly's got his blog, which is Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, Connelly, C-O-N-N-E-L-L-Y.Jigsy, Jigsy.com. Also, you have some ebooks up now. The Mortarman, which is a history of your father and his mortar unit in the Second World War. The other is Malaysia. Tell us about that. What's that book about?
Well, I'm a Yaley. A Story of America is a novel that I actually wrote about 25 years ago. I never even tried to get it published till recently, and I updated it. And it basically is about, and people are just aghast when they read it because they say you were predicting the future that far, or that long ago. It's about a weak president of the United States who basically betrays the American people, cuts our defenses, sets us up, and the Chinese take advantage of it by using platform weapons based in space on platforms, which, by the way, the Chinese have launched a couple recently that are, in fact, capable of carrying weapons. And they attack us. And the President of the United States surrenders, and we are occupied. And the book is about the resistance that springs up from the American people fighting back, and it involves our veterans and this sort of thing, and it involves the American Indians, and people are reading the book. The left has discovered it, and they are screaming bloody murder. They're calling me names on Amazon and doing reviews or so-called reviews where they're saying I'm crazy, a crazy gun nut because I talk about the Second Amendment and the right to keep and bear arms, that I'm a racist because I say bad things about the poor communist Chinese and about the poor jihadists who would support them in the book. So the book is being widely read right now, and a lot of people are enjoying it. And the Borderman is, if you like history, that's a historically accurate account. It took 3 years to write, and it basically is selling about 1,000 copies a month on Amazon.
That's really interesting. Tell us about the vets. What's the latest story about the vets? Because the older vets are committing suicide like crazy. There are a lot homeless. They're not getting any help from Obama, and while he's giving free health care to illegals from Mexico and other countries, The veterans are basically being given the short shot, and they're told also that if their relatives, like their wife, is handling their finances, are not even capable of, quote, handling a gun. That's pretty bizarre logic, and it's not based on the law or even the regulations. Tell us what's going on.
Well, no, the law is that there is a fiduciary program that's been around the VA for a long time. It was designed to help elderly veterans who might be suffering from dementia, who couldn't handle their own financial affairs, their own benefits. So that was the source of it. Then when Obama took over, 2009, he started taking the program and saying that no real need to show a veteran had a problem. Anything could have the VA declare them incompetent to handle their own financial affairs. If you have minor PTSD, which, by the way, PTSD is not even described as a mental illness, but if they have minor PTSD, if they've ever been depressed, if they have physical injuries, or if, for example, and I talked to a wife of a veteran just the other day, whose husband is 100% physically disabled, but he's mentally just fine, handles, most of his own affairs, actually works on the internet, but he lets his wife take care of the family finances. And she's always done that. And he told them at the VA that, and they sent him a letter saying because of that reason and that reason only, he was incompetent to handle his own affairs. And then the letter that veterans are getting also says that once they are declared incompetent, they can no longer own, purchase, possess, or transport firearms or ammunition. If they do, they're guilty of a felony. So
wow.
This is happened now to 150, over 200,000 vets we know now have been put on the NICS list, the National Instant Criminal Background Check list. They cannot own firearms legally. The criteria for being on that list is being a convicted felon, which these veterans are not, or being adjudicated to be mentally ill to the point of being a danger to themselves or others.
Maybe they're a danger to the tyrannical regime that Obama wants to set up either during his last days in office or to become if you want to call it a dictator for life, or hand over power to the next dictator, maybe Hillary Clinton we call her. But it's basically the militarization of the police we saw in Ferguson. It's the change in the selective use of laws. It's the twisting of regulations. It's the hamstringing of the immigration system, so that we have many judges outraged by the federal government basically blocking the system up so it can't work. I think everything Obama does is to destroy this country. I think he's systematically taking it apart.
Well, I think you're absolutely correct. And the veterans are a threat. I mean, there are 23 million of us out there. We all are well trained. We all took that oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So we have to be disarmed. But as you pointed out, not only can we fight, we can train the younger people to fight.
Yeah, even if you can't fight, you need to pass on your knowledge. And that's the danger. They don't want to have millions of armed civilians who basically know the skill sets and can be trained up in a matter of 4 to 6 weeks how to actually defend their homes, their county, their state, against a tyrannical regime that wants to be perhaps bringing in even foreign troops, robotic drones, cybernetic warriors, or airborne or ground-based warriors called sword robots. And they did deploy these in Gulf War II, which is a laboratory. So they want to be able to deploy these in America. They're not just for foreign implementation. They're for implementation here in America to create a tyrannical state. That's why, against even FAA common sense, they have all these drones flying all over the place, even if they can cause near crashes with commercial airliners, which have occurred near DIA a number of times in other places. So I think that our federal government's out of control. We don't really have a federal government anymore. We have a proxy for globalist government, and we have a proxy sock puppet president for Satan, the Queen of England, and George Soros that basically does what they're bidding. He's a prostitute for the politicians that run the world, the billionaire class maniacs who don't care about a sovereign population and sovereign citizens. And the veterans, of course, should be treated with the most respect, are getting, I call it the very awful hospital system. They finally said they're going to kick in some more money. It's not enough. It's ridiculous the way the VA system works.
Well, it's out of hand, and of course, people need to realize that this attempt to disarm the veterans is they're using, adjudication is supposed to mean a court hearing before you're declared mentally ill. And Obama and Eric Holder decided that they weren't going to follow the law anymore. Adjudication, according to Eric Holder, means that anybody who works for the federal government, even as an independent contractor, can declare a veteran mentally ill to the point of being a danger to themselves or others, and put them on the NICS list. Even if no declaration has been made, they use the incompetency declaration. If they get that reversed, then they are in turn told by the FBI, we don't care if it's been reversed. We don't care if you've been declared incompetent. We're still not going to let you own firearms. Now,
right.
They are expanding this. The United States Justice Foundation, USJF.net, we are in the middle of fighting new regulations that are going to expand this program to the civilian population. So they're doing it for the veterans, and they're about to expand it to the civilian population. We already filed one lawsuit that we won to get information, but we're trying to get more information out of federal agencies, and they're basically refusing to cooperate, refusing to give us the information we need. We are going to have to file lawsuits on behalf of individual veterans, and we're already representing some of them. We need a lot of money to do that. We're not charging these veterans or their families a penny. So
they go to USJF.
Go to USJF.net and find out how to donate to help us.
That's amazing. It's important, and I'm going to certainly do it. What's the latest on the impeachment, the documents? Any upgrade or any changes, any new impeachable offenses that Obama needs to have this appended to his long list of violations of the Constitution and the rules of separation of powers?
Well, he's committing more impeachable offenses. I usually am in the documents every couple of months, and I did that just a couple of months ago. But the documents themselves are in the hands. We send copies to members of the House of Representatives, and some of them have in turn referred them to the House Judiciary Committee for review. The staff of the House Judiciary Committee is telling people to call them, but they do have the documents. They are reviewing them, and they want to do it right. And people need to call their members of Congress to encourage them to vote them out of the committee and to get them to the House floor. And none of that's going to happen before the election.
Right. So, in other words, we start contacting now.
But by the same token, there's not enough time. But after the election, people need to contact their members of Congress and say, we have read these articles of impeachment. They're available on my blog. They're available on the USJF website. And so people can read them, and contact your member of Congress and tell them that you want them to support them.
Absolutely amazing. Wow. Expanding from the veterans to the civilians. That'll wake up the population, won't it? All of a sudden, It's not just the veterans being abused, it's everybody. If you are on, maybe if your doctor from HHS says you're on an antidepressant, you no longer can buy a gun. What do you think of that? Maybe if you're anxious and you're seeing a psychologist just to talk, you can't buy a gun. That's what's coming, isn't it? Oh boy. Tyranny is out of control. Thank you, USJF, Michael Connelly, attorney. Again, Michael Connelly at jigsy.com. Amazing.